Yeah, I think something as simple as just reminding people, whether that's in your own family, like literally your kids, your husband, your wife, or even your extended family, just reminding them through your own actions, really, what Christmas is all about. Because it's so easy to get just caught up into, again, the material world, getting caught up into gifts, and because that happens all the time. People are doing, for my family, one of the big things is always the gag gift game, and so everybody's always really focused on what are they going to get for the gag gift, or maybe somebody's focused on what they're going to get somebody else. And, not that I'm not saying that stuff's not important. Community, family, those things are important, but it's easy to get caught up and forget what matters. And so just reminding people that the season of Advent is not a time to get prepared for buying gifts. It's not a time to get on Amazon and buy a bunch of stuff for everybody. It's always a time to prepare for the incarnation. It's always a time to, and when I say prepare again, what does that really mean? Sometimes I wonder if people have ever even took 5 minutes out of their life to think about what does that exactly mean? The fact that God, who created the whole dang universe, our minds cannot even wrap itself around the immensity of the universe, and yet that God became a human being. Not only did he become a human being, he was born into our world a baby. And just to sort of think about that for a few minutes. Now, it's very difficult because I try often, and oftentimes my brain feels like it's going to explode because I'm like, I don't even know how that's possible. How could God do that? Why would God do that? But it's just a wonderful reflection for my own life. And so I do a lot of that year round, but specifically during the season of Advent, just kind of like, I can't believe God did this. And then generally what happens, it always leads you to this great sense of like thanksgiving. And just it softens your heart. And you're just like, man, I got to be more like that. I got to be able to give myself more. How can I become more like God? And no greater love than that, than to give, to lay down your life for your friends. And our blessed Lord did that in the incarnation.
And I know you like to talk about practical ways of doing things. Maybe sacrifice something. Like, what's something that you've always done leading up to Christmas that you just cannot, you think, okay, I cannot live without doing this, or I cannot celebrate Christmas without doing this. But it's not necessarily necessary to whatever. Can you give that up at least for a couple weeks? Can you maybe hold off on decorating your house with the Christmas decorations a few extra days? Just challenge yourself a little bit to say, hey, I'm going to try to give Advent its due.
Or celebrate Christmas the way you're supposed to, which most people like to take the Christmas decorations down the Friday after Christmas, and it's like, well, it's still Christmas,
12 days, yeah.
Celebrate the Christmas season until it's actually over. But a lot of people, so again, part of that is just getting to know your faith, right? A lot of people don't know their faith. They sort of get caught up in just in the world and what's going on in the world and just what everybody else is doing. We just become like everybody else. I say that all the time. As Catholics, the world's not supposed to influence us. We're supposed to influence the world. We're supposed to change the world, right? You're supposed to be a city set on a hill, a lamp in a dark place. That's what we're supposed to be. And so how do we do that? Do we leave our Christmas decorations up during Christmas, or do we take them down? Do we continue to remind people, hey, it's still Advent, because people always love to say Merry Christmas, and it's like, well, Christmas is a week away, but let's not get there yet. We still are in that preparation time. Because again, what a wonderful celebration. And that's, I think too, the church in her wisdom gives us plenty of time to focus. It's not like one day you get to, Advent's not a week. It's not, it's 4 weeks to really be intentional about how am I going to get ready for Christmas this year? How are things going to be different?
Well, I think I would encourage our parishioners to come into this very chapel, open that tabernacle. It's a little lid. You just got to open it and spend some time in prayer with Jesus. Leave your phone in the car for 10, 15 minutes and just be at one with our Lord. Pray a rosary, or just sit in silence, or meditate upon the scriptures. Read from the prophet Isaiah, or read the first couple chapters of St. Luke's Gospel, those kind of rich texts that surround the events of Advent and Christmas. Obviously, like we've talked about a million times, going to confession, going to the different events that we have as a parish. I think we have lessons and carols one night during the Advent season. Maybe diving deeper into a Marian devotion. I know the parish gave out books that were written by Father Mike Schmitz, some reflections by him yesterday. Pick up that devotional, or, pick up any devotional you want, or, pick a new saint to learn about.
Well, what you're talking about is doing, Advent and Lent are not the same thing, but treating it as sort of a little bit like Lent, where we're, not going to maybe give up Cokes or something, but hey, this year I'm going to do something just a little bit different, as you say. I'm going to learn about a particular saint. I'm going to read a book, I'm going to put down my phone. I'm only going to spend 30 minutes a day on my phone, and the rest of the time I'm going to try to spend in prayer or one of these other things I've talked about. No doubt. I can't remember where I heard this, but they were talking about nobody likes to be in a room where nobody likes them. So you and I were in this room, and it was full of people, and nobody liked us. We wouldn't want to be in this room. And the reflection was based on the fact that heaven's like that. Like, God doesn't want to be in a room or a place where nobody likes him. And I haven't stopped thinking about that because it's like, it's been a personal reflection on my own, which is, if I were in a room with Jesus, would I like him? Not that he wouldn't be Lord or King, but it's like, could I exist in the room with him, like you were talking about with adoration? I think that's a challenge for a lot of people. They could come to the chapel, they could come to the church in adoration, and they get uncomfortable, and because they're like, I don't know what to say or what to do, or maybe their sins or whatever might be going on in their life, but they're not a friend of Jesus, And so I've been thinking about that. If you were in a room, because that's heaven. Heaven's not a place where there's a person in there. It's like, the heck with Jesus. Like, I don't want to. No, he's like, if you don't like me and you don't want to be here, I'm not going to force you to be here. So, heaven's a place where, God, our blessed Lord, everybody's going to be friends with him. So I think sometimes we think, well, I can just get in. And it's like, no, you really, like, if you imagine yourself sitting in a room, and again, this would be a great reflection during Advent as well. I'm in a room with our Lord, and what are we going to talk about? Do we have things in common? Do I know his mother? Do I know his friends? Do I live my life like him? Again, just things in common. If he might be like, well, how's it going, and what are you up to? And you're like, well, nothing good. Well, that conversation is going to end pretty quickly. So I haven't stopped thinking about that fact. If I were in a room, and again, adoration is a wonderful way to prepare, going to Mass, receiving the sacraments. We keep talking about that, but those are wonderful ways to measure your faith on whether or not, when it comes to leaving this world and entering into the kingdom of our blessed Lord, am I going to be ready to get there? Can I sit there with the Lord and have a conversation? And, Advent, again, can help us prepare for that.
I think evangelization is multifaceted, but it all starts with our worship. Everything that the church does and everything that comes forth from the church, all her good works of mercy, so on and so forth, stem from the altar. They stem from our prayer together, that's that ancient prayer of the church. And so I think it starts right there, and then so that's a source. That beauty is a source of evangelization in itself, of showing people the beauty and the goodness of God, and taking that beauty, taking that grace out into the world, and really Christifying. So taking it to your families, and then your workplace, and just your everyday life, not being obnoxious, saying you have to be Catholic and the good Lord says this, but bringing the example to Christ to the people and to the nations, and then inviting people in is a huge thing. You say, hey, come to church, come experience the goodness of God, using your talents, your gifts, your abilities to bring others in. And then also, I think another big aspect of evangelization is using some of the new media that's available. We talk about the horrors of social media and too much screen time and YouTube and all these other social media platforms, but there's a lot of good things on there, a lot of great tools for evangelization. We just got to, use those in the right way, in a way that's bringing souls closer to Christ and not so much turning them away.
Yes, no doubt. And people, I think in people's minds, they imagine, okay, to be an evangelist, as Jesus told the apostles, go out to the ends of the earth, right? And so I think a lot of people believe, well, I've got to go all over the place. And no, that's not what the church teaches. The church, for some people, that's their vocation. But for the vast majority of us, it's going to be to take care of your own family, evangelize your own family. As a father, being the man of the house and making sure that your children know the faith. As a mother, teaching the children the faith. That's the best thing that you can do. If you don't feel comfortable with that, we have a faith formation program here. Of course, we've got our school, St. Joe. We have wonderful teachers at both places, and so people can use the resources of the church to teach their kids the faith. I'm going to give a plug for Father Corey, our vocations director. If you see a young man or a young woman that has a vocation to priesthood or to become a nun, encourage them. I think that's a great way to evangelize, is to say, hey, you've got some good qualities. You take your faith seriously. It seems to me that you've got a pretty solid prayer life. Maybe God's calling you to be a priest. And that's a pretty good way to evangelize, because if you could get somebody to say yes to that vocation, I mean, to think of all the evangelization, just your ability to say, have you thought about this? May get a guy or a gal to think about, maybe God is calling me to this, and they say yes, and that could change a lot, especially in the diocese. Again, I think young men and young women believe, well, I've got to go to the ends of the earth. Take care of your people at home. Take care of the Diocese of Owensboro. Again, I don't know what God's calling you to, but I always encourage people. One of the greatest places to evangelize is right here in Western Kentucky. There are so many fallen away Catholics. Even our own numbers here at St. Joseph, only about a third or a hair more actually attend Mass on Sundays. So we've got a lot of people that don't always attend on Sundays. So there's just within our own parish people that are not necessarily getting evangelized. So you don't have to do YouTube videos, and you don't have to travel the world. You can literally make a difference in your own home and in your own community and in your own churches.
Yeah, start simple, start local. They talk about buying local, supporting local farmers, evangelize local.
And as you said, you have to know the faith. Yeah. So if you don't feel comfortable, a lot of people say, well, I really don't know the faith. Well, I mean, there's no better time in history when you should be able to know your faith. Literally, you could Google something and find it, or chat GPT it, or whatever the case may be, and find the answer and to be able to do something. So we really have no excuses in terms of being able to evangelize. Again, we go back to the best way to always evangelize is how we live our lives. I tell people all the time, the reason that one of the reasons I have a vocation to priesthood was because of my family, because of my parents and grandparents and the example that they gave me. I can't tell you everything they told me, but I can tell you how they live their lives. I can tell you how serious my grandfather took the Eucharist, how every time he received the Eucharist, he was a convert to the faith. And every time he received the Eucharist, he'd come back to the pew. He had the little blue book, and he would pray his prayers after communion. He'd give them to me, and then I would pray those prayers. So I knew he took that very, very seriously. My grandmother in her devotion to Our Lady and the Rosary, she prayed it all the time. She was constantly listening to Bishop Fulton Sheen, trying to learn the faith. They were catechists in their own parish, so they lived the faith. I saw how they lived the faith, and there's a reason I'm a priest today, and that's a big part of it. And to kind of put a cherry on top of this, I would say to connect this with the Incarnation, Christmas, is the best way to evangelize is to give your life to love, and that's the best way. So when people see Grandma, Grandpa, Mom, and Dad are like literally sacrificing for me, for each other, for their parish, for their school, and they take it very seriously, that means a lot. And kids see that. I think as adults, we forget the impact that we have on young people. I'm talking about my own life from the time I was a little kid up. The kids are watching all of us, and we have to live our faith. If we're sitting on our phone all the time, they're going to sit on their phone all the time. So they're definitely watching us. Our lives matter. What we do matters. And so that's the best example. Look to the Lord. The Lord lived his life, gave everything. Anything that we experience, he goes through in his life. And so we can never say, well, God doesn't know how it feels, because he does.